In this question where it says exact value, what that is saying without saying it is you won't be able to use a calculator. So you can't just punch in cos 3 pi on 4 and let the calculator give you a decimal. These are non-calc questions, that's what it's implying. So cos of 3 pi on 2, I'm going to tell you how I do it in my brain. If you've got a different method than works for you, then that's great. I'm just going to show you how I do. The first thing I think about is the number family. So essentially, I ignore the numerator, and in my head, I just think about pi on 4. I'll worry about the 3 later. Step number 2, I think about the coordinates. Coordinates of pi on 4. Root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. Then if the question is asking for cos, I pick the x coordinate. If it's asking for sine, I pick the y coordinate. We'll get down to tan in a second. What's the easiest way to remember which is cos and which is sine? Alphabetical. X comes before y, cos comes before sine. A is asking for cos, so I only have to worry about the x coordinate. It's nice with pi and 4 because they're the same. Step 4, then I look at the numerator. And that's going to tell us the quadrant. I look at the numerator, and that tells us the quadrant. 3 pi on 4 is which quadrant? Quadrant 2. And then the last step, I'm going to put either a positive or minus, positive or negative. So I'm going to call it the sign, but S-I-G-N, based on the cast rule. Quadrant 2, cos. What does that tell us down here? What do we know about cos in quadrant 2? Negative, so the final answer is negative root 2 on 2. That's all you would need to show. This would be either a 1-mark question or a multiple choice question. You don't need to show all this thought process. This is just what I go through in my head. You get 1 mark for negative root 2 on 2. Is Friday kind of coming back? A little bit. Sine 5 pi on 6. The first thing I think of is the pi on 6 family. Then I think of the coordinates of the pi on 6 family. The first coordinate links to 6 how? Which makes the other one 1/2. Because the question wanted sine, I'm going to take the second coordinate. 5 pi on 6 is a quadrant reference. 5 pi on 6 is quadrant 2. What do we know about sine in quadrant 2? And I'm going to write the positive just so you can see later that we talked about it. I wouldn't normally as a final answer write it, but we know the answer is plus 1/2. For tan, I still do step number 1. I think of the family, and I still do 4 and 5. It's 2 and 3 that need to change because you can't get tan. Well, you can from the coordinates, but you have to do more work. And these are straight up memorization. We talked about tan of 0 or pi or 2 pi is 0. Sides of the circle, slope is 0. And tan of pi on 2 or 3 pi on 2. Undefined, because it's a vertical line. Slope of a vertical line is undefined. And then we had the 3 values of the families. So tan pi on 3, tan pi on 4, tan pi on 6. And I showed you all the math about why it is these values. I'm not going to go through it again. You just need to remember it's y divided by x, so you can actually calculate it if you forget. Tan of pi on 3, root 3. Remember 3 and 3. Tan of pi on 4. And tan of pi on 6. And remember, 3 plus 3 is 6. So for steps 2 and 3, you're just pulling the value right out of your brain, the 7 values of tan. So I don't look at the tan, I don't look at the 7, all I look is the family first, pi on 6. Then because it's tan, I don't need to think of the coordinates, I just need to pull up the pi on 6 family. What's the tan value for the pi on 6 family? Root 3 on 3. 7 pi on 6 is a quadrant reference. What quadrant is 1 plus the numerator? Quadrant 3. In quadrant 3, tan is? That's all you need to write down to get full marks, root 3 on 3. How are we doing so far? Okay. Tan of 60, I actually work better in radians because I have that little trick with radians in the first coordinate. So if you want to work in degrees, you can work in degrees. The first thing I do with a degree is I put down the corresponding radian, and we know that that's pi on 3, sorry. Remember, 6 goes with 3. Then I think of the coordinates. What's the coordinates of pi on 3? And so the reason I work in radians, because that 1 plus 2, I remember it's 3. If you try to link to 60, you might put root 3 on 2 first. So I just flip to the degrees. Are we looking for the x coordinate or the y coordinate, and how do we know? X, how do we know? Cos. 60 degrees or pi on 3 is what quadrant?
1.
Quadrant 1. So the cos value of 60 degrees is 1/2. Do letter E either by yourself or turn and talk. Yeah, absolutely. And if you want later, I can show you where these values come from. Or you can not care and just memorize them. Completely up to you.
Is it good to know?
No, not really.
Just memorize?
Yeah. And again, I have that link 3 goes with 3. And 6 goes with 3 plus 3.
Okay.
I don't hear one high five. That makes me really nervous when there's not even like one, not one. Yeah. -1/2. Pi on 6. What are the coordinates of pi on 6? Root 3 on 2, 1/2. Which one do we want? 1/2. Why do we want 1/2? Because it's sine. Now we look at the numerator. 7 pi on 6 is quadrant 3. Sine is negative. Total value is -1/2. Who had it? High fives to you guys. So right now you have to do a lot of thinking to get this. It's just like when you started learning multiplication and I said 7 times 6. And some of you still need to think. The more of this you do, the easier it's going to become. In a few weeks, I'm going to say cos of pi on 6, and you're going to know like that it's root 3 on 2. So at the beginning, it's some step. By the time you work with these, you'll get it. Cos of pi on 6. Pi on 6 family is root 3 on 2, 1/2. Which one do we want? Root 3 on 2. Pi on 6 is what quadrant? Quadrant 1. Cos is, final answer, root 3 on 2. Negative, uh-oh. Okay, ignore the negative. Just pretend it's not there. Pi on 3 family. 1/2 root 3 on 2. Do we want which one, x or y? Conflicting. Fight it out, fight it out. Y, so we want root 3 on 2. The negative is just a quadrant reference. It's just hiding. So we know if we were to go in a positive direction, 1/3 is up from the x-axis. Where is negative pi on 3? It's quadrant 4. That's all it's telling you. It's a negative quadrant reference. It's telling you it's Q4. What do you know about sine in Q4? So this is equal to negative. I threw an H because this was an exam question 2 years ago that caused mass panic and people freaking out and what is this and what's that little 2? And I'm like, well, what is normally a little 2 that's stuck up somewhere? It's just an exponent. Now, mathematically, this is really cos of pi in brackets squared. And there's a reason we don't write it with the brackets and we move that little 2, which I'll tell you later. But that's all it's asking you is what is cos of pi squared? So BEDMAS says we go inside these brackets first. So what's cos of pi? Well, that's just you're picturing the axes. If you're a picture person, you might want to draw where is pi on the left-hand side. What are the coordinates on the left-hand side of the circle? -1, 0. So what's the cos value at pi? And then it's just asking -1 squared. What's -1 squared? That's it. Okay, so just an exponent. Don't let it freak you out. Just an exponent. How are we doing so far? Okay, does it kind of put it all back in your head? Let's meet the rest of the family. Yeah, sine, cos, and tan are awesome, but they have girlfriends. So the first thing you need to know in case your grade 10 and 11 teacher never mentioned this is these are actually abbreviations. Okay, just like we call Michael Mike because it's short, it's easier, right? Bill from William. These are actually shortened versions. What is the real name of this first guy? That would be in French. In English? It's signed with an E. Yeah, we just abbreviate it to 3 letters because if you look at the button on your calculator, it only fits 3 letters. So we just abbreviated. What is cos short for? Ooh, you know that one, cosine. And then tan is really short for tangent. Okay? Their girlfriends also have shortened versions and also have longer names. Now, the first thing you need to know, this is not ksk, because that sounds stupid. And if you say that to a university professor, they'll think you're stupid. This is not ksk. This, we actually call it by its real full name, because the shortened version is stupid. We call it cosecant. 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 I don't know. Cosecant. Cosecant? Cosecant. I don't know. I said cosecant. I don't know. I must have heard that somewhere. This girlfriend down here is not sec. Even though that doesn't sound as stupid, we just don't call it that. Her name is secant. Again, I say secant. I don't know why. Secant. Secant. I can't. I don't know. And the third girlfriend we don't call cot. We just don't. Because if the other 2 don't have shortened names, this one can't have a shortened named. This is cotangent. You have now met the whole family of trig functions. There are actually 6. Listen to their names. Sine and cosine, secant and cosecant, tan and cotan. Listen to that again. Sine and cosine, secant, cosecant, tangent and cotan. What do you notice there? There's really 3, and then they all have a co in front. Those are what I'm going to call the girlfriends because they're related to each other. The definition of cosecant is 1 divided by sine. Cosecant is the reciprocal of 1 over sine. Cosecant is 1 over sine, or the reciprocal of 1 over sine. What's a reciprocal? where you take a fraction and you flip it, so sine over imaginary 1. Flip it becomes 1 over sine. In terms of what you learned way back in grade 10 in terms of right-angled triangles, this is h over o. Why is it h over o? Because that's the flip of sine. So sine is dating cosecant, not cosine, which would make sense. No. Secant is 1 over cos. It's the reciprocal of cos. And in terms of the right-angled triangle, it's what over what? Cotan, which that's how we shorten it a little bit. We either call it cotangent or cotan. We never call it cot. Cotan is 1 over tan. Which is equal to? You're going to remember cotan and tan because they both have the word tan in it. What you're going to do is screw up the other ones. You're going to want to put cosine and sine together. It doesn't work that way. C goes with an S, C goes with an S. C's don't go together, S's don't go together. So this would never be cosecant is 1 over cos because C's don't go together. C's go with S's, S's goes with C's, tan and cotan is easy. Grab your index card. The next 2 units are full of formulas. If you've already peeked at the formula sheet, there's lots of stuff with these things. We're going to do it in a card just so you can have it beside you when it's smaller than trying to dig out your formula sheet all the time. So we're going to put our first couple formulas that we know, which is cosecant is 1 over sine. Secant is 1 over cos. And the one that makes sense, cotan, is 1 over tan. Those are on your formula sheet. We're just doing the card so it's little and you can keep it close. There are also, if you look up on the blue sheets, ignore the one hanging off the wall, the very first one by the monkey there, there's those 3 formulas. So they'll always be up there. I'm not hiding them. It's not a secret. They're right up there if you can't remember. No, we did. It fell off again. Now let's go back to tan. He's one of the most important trig functions because we've already talked, he's actually linked to the other 2. Remember we said that tan is y over x? Remember that with the coordinates? Well, what's y? Sine. And what's x? Cos. So tan is actually equal to sine over cos. They're all linked to each other. Well, that actually gives us the second formula for cotan. Yes, I can say it's 1 over tan, but because tan is sine over cos, what can I do with sine over cos? Cos over sine. Keep the card safe because you're going to be using it lots and lots and lots, and we're going to add more formulas onto the back. Where I recommend you keep this if you don't have a safe spot is in your plastic sleeve because then you won't lose. You can just dump it in there and then you can find it. So some typical questions. Am I going too fast? Okay. Keywords. What would you like to highlight? That's telling you no calculator. It's telling you can't just punch this into a calculator and get numbers. It's saying use your brain, use your unit circle. What else would you like to highlight? Turn to someone in front, behind, beside you. Tell them the names of all 6 trigonometric functions. Focus back, and I swear to you, that's all of them. We're not hiding any more. There are 6, that's all they are. You just weren't ready in grade 10 for the 3 new ones because you weren't ready to know that sine, cos, tan were dating and grown up, and we weren't ready. Now we're ready. What else would you like to highlight in the question? This question is giving you an angle. It's telling you theta is 2 pi on 3. And what it's asking you for is what is sine theta, cos theta, tan theta, which we've already done. That's what we did with the unit circle. All we're adding in is the 3 friends, which are, so which one goes with sine? Cosecant. Remember, C goes with S. What's tan's girlfriend? Secant. And tan's bestie? Cotan. That's what the question is asking you to do. We've already done the left-hand column. This is just asking for the coordinate values. Pi on 3 family. What are the coordinates? And the numerator is telling you a quadrant. What quadrant is it telling you? So what do we know about the coordinates in quadrant 2? Sine is positive and cos is negative. Yes, I am. I think, yes. So what is the sine of 2 pi on 3? What is the cos? Tan you've either memorized or you're going to take those coordinates and divide them and do all the work. If you've memorized the pi on 3 family, the tan value, negative root 3. Why is it negative? Because quadrant 2. Okay, so we've done this. That's just picking right off the unit circle. Watch how cool these ones are. Take the sine value and flip it. What's cosecant of 2 pi on 3? 2 on root 3. What is the secant value of 2 pi on 3? 2. Where did the 1 go? Yeah, it's underneath. We just know we don't need to write it. Yes, sir?
Should it be negative if?
I forgot a negative. Thank you. Negative, negative. High five to Andrew. Again, flip this one. Little imaginary 1 there. Flip it over. That's it. That's all the question is asking. Now, because every year somebody asks me, let's just talk about negatives with fractions. What's the difference between these 3 fractions? And you don't need to write this down. What's the difference between those 3? Absolutely nothing. So if you have the negative here on the bottom, great. If you've got it on the top, great. If you've got it out in front, great. They all mean the same thing. So just because it was with the 3 here doesn't mean it has to stay with the 3 there. The book will tend to put the negative on the top because that's what we like to do. Questions over? All we're adding is the new coordinate or the new families that you're just meeting. Question 2, same thing, exact values mean no calculator. All 6 function means all 6 of the functions, and we're heading to 30 degrees. My brain works in rads because I have tricks to remember the rad coordinates I don't have for degrees. So you need to know 30 degrees is what? Pi on 6. Coordinates of pi on 6. Quadrant. So does that matter? No. Write down all 6 trig function values. check with someone when you're done. High five if you have the same answers.
Root 3 over 2. Root 3 on 3. 2. 2 on root 3. And 3 on root 3.
I switched the order. Left brains, don't let that freak you out. Sine. Cosecant. Cosecant. I like to do them in pairs because they go together. Cos. Secant. Wait. Do we have to rationalize? Sometimes the book will, so if you see something different, try rationalizing it and see if yours matches. But on the exam, you don't have to rationalize. Tan. Cotan. Who had all 6 of those correct? Awesome. Questions over. Yes. Turn back a couple days in your notes where we did this review of 30 SP. Maybe Thursday last week, maybe Wednesday. And let's look at number 4 because it had the most words. So let's just put this back in our head. How did we do this? So they gave us sine. They wanted tan. What was the first thing we do? Hint, the method is in a box. Right, we labeled this sine as O over H. Then what did we have to find? If we had O and H, we had to find A. Okay, and then for tan, we know that that is O over A, and then we substituted in those values, and then the last thing we did is in a box. The last thing we did is, okay, do you kind of remember that? We're going to do the exact same thing, just now they're going to ask you for one of these newbies. Number 3, if sine theta is 2 on 7, and pi on 2 less than theta less than pi, that scares me. We'll leave that for a second. Find the value of cotan theta. No different than what you did last year we reviewed. It's just you didn't know cotan last year. That's the only thing that's different. They're not asking for one you know. They're asking for a new one. Steps are going to be exactly the same. Step 1. What do you want to do? I heard someone say write out the equation. Okay. I heard a really quiet O over H. Confirm. Okay, next step. Four. We have to find the missing side, so we know that O squared plus A squared equals H squared. Let's do a little bit of mental math here. Let's go straight to 2 squared is. A squared we don't know. 7 squared. A squared equals. A equals. Can we simplify?
3 root 5.
Tell me, Andrew, where'd that come from, 3 root 5?
Given that 45 is 9 times 5, and the square root of 9 is 3.
Okay, so far nothing than what we did last day, nothing new from last year. Here's the new part. They're asking for cotan. Go back to your card. Let's just add in the side so you've got both reference. If cosecant is 1 over sine, it's what side over what side? If cosecant is 1 over sine, it's what side over what side? h over ho. If secant is 1 over cos, it is ha. And cotan is? Yeah, that one doesn't spell anything. Ow. That sounds like a wolf. Ow. Only part that's new is now they're asking cotan. I'm going to put it into rid just so we know that that's what's new. Cotan you now know is A over O. The A value is? And the O value is? Are we done? We need to talk something about the cast rule. What's the part of the question we haven't used yet? All this crap, this pi on 2, less than theta, less than pi. We talked already, what does this notation mean in English? Between. That's just a quadrant reference. That's all it's telling you. What quadrant is between pi on 2 and pi? It's telling you that it's Q2. So we come back up here to tan. Well, what the heck is the rule for the new functions? It matches its friend. So cotan is in the same quadrants as tan. Secant is in the same as cos. Cosecant is the same as sine. So it matches the cast rule with its boyfriend or girlfriend. Cotan goes with tan. Tan in quadrant 2 is? There's your final answer. -3 root 5 on 2. Thoughts so far? Last one for today, then I'll give you some time to practice. Is that a stretch or a question? I would love to answer a question. Because the whole unit is about solving trigonometric functions, which is where we're going the next 2 days. Remember these guys all being able to solve? And this has applications in biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, you name it. It has applications, which we'll talk all about in Unit 2. Everyone to build a roller coaster, need to know sinusoidal functions. The weather needs to know sinusoidal functions. We'll talk about it later. You didn't think I could answer that, did you? Mm-hmm.
I thought for the weather, all I needed to do was pull numbers out of nowhere.
Sometimes that feels like they've got a big dartboard, but there actually is some science behind it. I'll even show you next unit how to predict how you're going to be feeling on grad day. All with math. Can't talk about it now. Too exciting. Can't talk about it. Question asks for secant. Interval 0 to pi. And they tell us cotan theta is -3. Can also tell how you'll be feeling the day after grad, which may be slightly different. Okay, what do you want to do? Steps have not changed. They're exactly the same as before. Like, don't everyone shout at once. I'll get all confused. Label the formula we have. What over what? A over O. I could switch it to tan. I'm going to just follow the same steps. Mathematically, you're right, but let's follow the same steps. What's our second step we always did? Find the missing side. What's missing? H, so I know O squared plus A squared equals H squared. Again, let's just do some mental math. 1 squared, -3 squared, so H squared equals, that means H equals, simplify. How do you know if you can simplify? How do you know if you can? No perfect square factor, so 1 and 10, 2 and 5, can't do anything with it. Step 2, check, check. Okay, step 3. Okay, go to what we want to know here. Substitute into that formula, H is, A is, and everyone always hates the last step. We got to figure out what is going on here with the quadrant. There's two pieces of quadrant information. The first is the interval. So that's which two quadrants? 1 and 2. But there's more quadrant information because they told us here cos is negative. So if cos is negative, can it be quadrant 1 and 2? Which one does it have to be? So we're down to 2. What do you know about secant in 2? Secant's girlfriend is cos. Cos in quadrant 2 is? So we don't touch it. We just leave it as root 10, negative 3. Okay, you have watched the coach. Now it's time to do so. Oh, I had another joke.